called Uva is the original book because it's sweet. And Phyllis, would we want to invite people to perhaps pour the music in, and if they feel inclined to move, that they could?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Bob, for playing for that and helping us get started on our journey in creative motion today. Well, as I said earlier, I'm Phyllis Paisley, and I'm so glad to be your hostess, I suppose, today. And for those who are unfamiliar with creative motion, would like to just give you the slightest bit of background information. These principles of creative motion were uncovered by Martha Stockton Russell, who lived a long time ago. And it does help us map an internal pathway that leads to outer expression that is more whole and efficient and effective and increases our creativity. The definition that you see here on the screen came to us by a former member of our Creative Motion family, who described it as the efficient use of physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional energy as it moves naturally in the body, and it is in all of life's experiences. It's divided into two sort of categories: that which is inner or potential energy, which occurs inside the body before action happens, and then that outer kinetic energy, the use of energy, which brings an idea to fulfillment. The creative motion principles are just four, and we're going to be touching briefly on these four basic ideas. The first being that the body is the primary instrument of expression, regardless of the media, and that it's important to tune the body just as you tune other instruments. The second principle is about a connection to the breathing center in the tuned body. Body tuning exercises increase the awareness of the breathing center, which is sometimes called the solar plexus. And for those who may not have ever attempted to discover their solar plexus and just kind of increase their awareness around it, I'd like to give you a little description of its location in the body. Maybe a few inches in your body, just at the place where the bottom of the sternum begins, that breastbone that's here, and then the bottom of the rib cage. If you can place your hand in the area, and I like to use the center of my palm in that area, placing your palm in that area that is kind of that soft, squishy place that is just below the breastbone in the center of that the ribs area. And it's a few inches inside the body. It's a nerve plexus where many different parts of the body, nerves and muscles, come together. The next thing I'd like for you to do, please, is just become aware of your breath. And so I'm going to place my hand back at my breathing center and just notice the breath as it comes in and goes out. If you'd like to match, do some experimenting and match to the visual that's on the screen, you're invited to do so, but you don't have to. You can just notice your own pattern. Is it deep? Is it shallow? Is it smooth? Do you allow all the breath to leave your body before the next inhalation? Just notice your breath. Creative motion core principles talk about connecting that breath that is sensed at center to the circumference. And the circumference of the body is referring to the outer edges, if you will, or everything in between. We often talk about arches and joints. Arches are foundational structural points within the body, and joints are hinge points in the musculoskeletal structure. So today in our exercise, we're going to connect from center to the body's many arches. You may use my voice as a guide for where you are connecting your breathing center to the various arches and joints and hinge areas of the body. Or you may use your eyes as you are looking at this list of some of the body's arches. But allow your breath to come in. And with each breath that you take into your body and each breath you allow to release from your body, connect to the areas in your body, such as your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, your hips, your knees, your ankles, the soles of your feet, the base of the throat, the top of the head, inside the mouth. Connection from center to the body's arches can bring about a sense of centeredness, of connectedness, of radiance. Martha Stockton Russell students called a balanced, lightweight body. So far, we've talked about the first 3 creative motion core principles, and this is a lot of internal work in preparation for that outer action, which is the release of energy, and it contains some common elements and follows a predictable pattern. We'll talk first about spring, which is a down up, which occurs at the onset of any action, and it can be visible and it can be sensed internally. Take just a moment and allow yourself, your breathing center, all of your circumference, to connect with that visual image you see on the screen of the person leaping from one place to the next, experiencing that sense of spring. Today, I'm here to talk about swing, which is a repeated pattern from one spring up and over the top to the next. And I have for you on the screen a little quote that I discovered as I was preparing for today's session that I felt like needed to be shared in its entirety. Martha Stockton Russell left us with a few written works, one of which we're using as our foundation for today's exploration. And it is a collection of folk songs called Sing, Swing, and Play. And in the preface to that book, she wrote the quote that you can see here. Your body will always make it clear to you the swing beat of a song. If you sing the melody and let yourself swing as sing, but notice that word let. If you make your body swing, you might as well stop before you begin, because you will never find the inner beat of any song by making yourself swing. Swing takes off from that pulse vibration at the center of your diaphragm. Oh, yes, it's real, that little live spark of something, but it is very tiny, and we have mostly overlooked it. Swing comes up and over to the top of the point in one sweep of motion, like a rocket, hangs poised for a second, and sweeps down on the other side, up and over the top of the other point, like this. The motion continues from one swing into the next swing, up and over the top. So the song that we've selected today to share with you to explore swing is called Boys and Girls Come Out to Play. And I have the music here on the screen. I don't know if it's easy for you to see or not, but what I'd love for us to do first is just kind of pour the music in as Bob gets a chance to play it for us. So Bob, whenever you are ready, we would love to hear you play the melody for Boys and Girls Come Out to Play.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Bob, for playing that melody. One of the challenges in working on Zoom is that sometimes the algorithms or the systems that are in place cause there to be a bit of a delay in, even though I'm sure when Bob played it, there weren't moments where there was a note that was extended beyond what would have been a typical beat pattern, and other times when it would kind of speed up a little bit. That's just kind of the nature of Zoom sometimes. So sometimes it's more difficult to experience that repetitive pattern when there are those technological aspects that we are dealing with. But I do want to say thank you so much, Bob, for playing that for us. And what I'd like to do next, I've taken just the first phrase. And if everyone is okay, the range that this particular piece is written in today is not all that comfortable for me to sing out loud. So I'm going to take it down just a little bit so that it's a little more comfortable for me. And what I'm going to do is sing it right now. Boys and girls come out to play. The moon is shining as bright as day. And I'm just going to have us work with that little section of this particular piece. I would like to sing it again. And when I sing it again, I'm going to ask you if you'll stay muted, please, but please allow yourself to be my echo in your muted spot. And make sure Marianne's there. Marianne is muted now too. So if you would be my echo, please. And then I will allow a little bit of extra space so that there's time for all the Zoom lag to catch up. Ready? Boys and girls come out to play. I'd like to repeat that phrase again. Please be my echo. Boys and girls come out to play. And the second part of it, the moon is shining as bright as day. And we'll repeat the second part. The moon is shining as bright as day. I'm going to sing the whole thing through this little section, And then I'd love for you in your own time and in your own place to, again, be my echo for both phrases. Boys and girls, come out to play. The moon is shining as bright as day. Martha Russell suggests that when we sing it, we have maybe a different experience than when we are hearing someone else sing it. And so I'm going to ask you please to sing it one more time on your own and pay attention to where are those repeated patterns that you might experience. That's that little swing beat. Where are the places where it seems that energy is released in this song? It could be in a variety of places for you. So please experiment as you sing it one more time on your own. Thank you so much. I'm wondering if any of you found those swing beats at the places that I've circled on the screen. Boys and girls, come out to play. The moon is shining as bright as day. Kind of it's a compound meter of 6/8. So it would be sort of on every strong beat. Maybe some of you felt it so that it was just on the downbeat of each 6/8 measure. Boys and girls, come out to play. The moon is shining as bright as day. It may be possible that some of you felt it just every other measure. Boys and girls, come out to play. The moon is shining as bright as day. What Martha Stockton Russell encouraged us all to do is to find that place within us, that inner spark place that allows us to uncover where those points of energy release are and where we feel the swing. So I'd love to have you all unmute and share with me your perceptions about this. But all I will say is in closing out our swing section today, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. So you are all invited to unmute and share how you felt the swing on Boys and Girls Come Out to Play.
I actually felt the swing on beats. I suppose it would be 1 and 4 and 6/8. So you would sing dugga dum dugga dum. It's where I actually felt the swing beat, even though it's technically in 2.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Would someone else like to share what they observed as they were sensing that inner release of energy, that spring?
For me, it was the beginning of the downbeat of each measure, just that, and carrying the arc over.
Thank you. It's one of the wonderful things about creative motion is that it allows you the opportunity to go inside yourself and make those decisions for yourself. And the decision you make today might not be the same one you make tomorrow, depending upon the circumstances of how you're feeling or where you're going. I have one more thing that I would like to ask, and just to see if it affects you at all. In doing a little research today, I learned that the song comes from the 1700s in England. And even though there's no evidence to support it, if the words are inviting kids to come out and play at night. And the supposition was that it's because they had to work during the day. So their only opportunity to play was at night. And as you see the words later in the song, leave your supper, leave your sleep. Come on, we got to play. We got to have some fun. We can't just work all the time. So if the message is about come and play, leave your work behind, children, does it change where the swing lands for you? Boys and girls come out to play. So studying a little bit more about whatever it is we're working on can also affect how we might interpret the piece and where we might find the swing. That brings swing to a close. Are there any other questions or observations?
Is swing related? I know inside music, at least in more modern ways of thinking of it, there's something called hypermeter, which is when you'll take a few measures, they be like 4 measures, and you'll divide it into being 4 fours. Swings and kind of related to that kind of idea?
That's a great question. I'm not familiar with what you described, Sam, so I don't know if anyone else on the call is and wants to weigh in on that. To me, swing goes beyond just music, although your example may be just another incarnation of analysis that's asking us to look more deeply in the music. Swing is finding those natural places where energy are released in your day or in anything. And in a daytime situation, like in a real life application, for some people, it's that first cup of coffee is that first energy release point in the day. And then the next one is when they've arrived at their destination, or maybe the next one is at the car, or maybe the next one is dropping their children off at a daycare setting. And everybody's going to be different, but there are points where energy is released. And when one is in the flow of things and one takes advantage of those energy release points, sometimes it can help everything work out more smoothly. So I think swing might be related to what you're describing, but it also transcends what it does. Does that help?
Yes, and Sam, in the hypermeter, that would be experiencing it at a higher level. And so instead of just the meter that you see on the page, it would be going with your feelings of what the composer has imparted into the music, where you're feeling a swing at a bigger level. So it could be related to that.
Thanks. I also had another question is, what is the difference between spring and swing? Is spring a component of swing is what it sounds like?
Yes. Spring is the down up release of energy, and swing is a repeated pattern of those down up releases.
Okay, thank you.
You are very welcome. Thank you for asking. And Mary Hannah, now that you have described the that other sense, I think 6/8 meter itself is an example of that, because there's that underlying pulse, da, 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 but we are only conscious of the dun, 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 since it's a compound meter. And so then when we take it, Sam, to that next level of looking at just the measure and then the entire then a longer phrase section. I'd say it's in alignment. Thank you. So next we turn it over, unless there are any other questions, we turn it over to Mary Ann, who's going to take us into another creative motion concept.
Well, first we're going to stay with swing for just a second. So Sam, when you asked about the difference between spring and swing, I think of it as spring being that burst of energy, and swing, so we have many bursts of energy, and swing being that motion of the energy from one burst to the next burst to the next burst to the next burst. And they can be regular in occurrence or they can be irregular. It all depends. Now, the swing of a piece of music we often, because we're human beings and we like regularity, we often slide into that. And so the folk song that I have is an example, though, where it does not slide into regularity for swing. And I just wanted us to look at that for a moment. So I'm going to show you the first page of Follow Me.
Somewhere.
Yes, it went away. So let me get it again. Um, so while I'm talking about finding this, I'm going to let Bob play the Follow Me on the piano. So, thank you, Bob. Now let's look at, when you're looking at the music, see the first two bars are in 2/4, and then we're in 4/4, and then we're back to 2/4, and then we're in 4/4. And as we move through the piece, we just keep moving back and forth. Now, it would be possible for us to feel, would you play and I'm gonna move, all right? I'm gonna move back just a little bit so you can see a little bit more. So we could do, that's actually what I was gonna do. We could also do it this way. We could do, would you play again, please? And so we could do that, but it would be more interesting, I think, if we tried out, just trying out the feeling of what does it mean to be in 2/4, 2/4, and then 4/4. So often in creative motion work, we will use a figure 8 to illustrate that feeling of here's the spring of energy and the swing, the arc of energy that covers that. And often we'll move sideways like a figure 8. In this particular one, though, I think it might be interesting for us to imagine that right here at the center, I'm not very tall, sorry, right here at the center, at the breathing center, imagine that you can connect from there with the palms of your hands, and let's move our circles this way. So let's just try that out. And I'm gonna allow my sense of swing to change between 2/4 and 4/4. You experience it too. And if it bothers you to see me, because I know there will be a little time lag, then you might turn around, okay? So that you're, or just look away from me if that bothers you. All right, here we go. Did you have a feel of some change between those 2/4 bars and the 4/4 measures? Anyone?
I think we might do it again. There was a little bit of a sound condensation, so to speak. And
Oh, okay.
so, Marianne, are you doing like a circular motion on the two? So in,
Yes, I'm doing.
and
Let's stand this
that
way.
might be useful. Yes, thank you.
So I'm doing this on 2. Bum da dum, bum ba dum, dum ba da 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 dum. So I'm letting that feel. I can feel that there's more energy over there on beat 3, but it's a higher energy. It's not, doesn't have that oomph that the other the 2/4 bars have. So I will not talk. I will let Bob play. And I'm going to turn so I'm not so visible, and so that doesn't bother you if you're moving to the music, okay? So looking at feeling the sense of spring and swing in a piece of music leads us to how music is put together. And one of the things that Martha Russell talked extensively about and developed as a concept is the idea of harmonic beat. I think of harmonic beat as the framework of a piece of music. In traditional music analysis, we talk all about chord progressions and how the harmony functions and how the rhythm functions and how melody plays into that. Well, harmonic beat is like that, but on a different level. So we're not really talking about secondary dominance and all that kind of stuff right now. What we're really talking about is what's the big framework of this piece of music. So harmonic beat is defined as the place in music where the energy of the rhythm, which we feel in swing, the rhythm of the harmony and the rhythm often of the melody align, and that results in that big structure. Let me show you a picture of that. Here's an image here of what harmonic beats are like in a piece of music. So if you see here, we have columns of energy, and we mark those with little X's that say, there's a point of energy, there's a point of energy, there's a point of energy. Let's imagine we have an imaginary melody up here that is made up of all of these notes, okay? These notes here that are in green are illustrating points in the music where we have a large amount of energy, enough energy that all these other notes we say ride on that energy. So you can see here we have these figure eights, and so we would have an impulse of energy here moving to the impulse of energy here, which moves to the impulse of energy here. And you notice here, our columns are closer together. Here, they're much further apart. Here, they're closer together. That just reflects the length of the note. So let's play around with that a little bit in Follow Me. Here you can see I've drawn the X's for each of the harmonic beats. And remember again, harmonic beat is just that place where you have lots of energy, energy that is enough to support the piece. We have rhythm, and we experience that in swing. We also have the element of harmony, and the element of harmony is twofold. Part of that is the harmonic progression. And so when you have a change of harmony, you're going to have more energy there. You've got more harmonic energy that contributes to that extra amount of energetic surge that will support the piece. But you also have energy at the bass line. And you know, we all know that the bass line matters so much in music. It is our foundation. It often carries the harmonics foundation of the piece, but not always, but often. And it just has the energy of support. So I'd like for us to experience our sense of swing that we experienced earlier. And let's compare it to how it feels to move to every harmonic beat. So if we'll play just the first line, okay? And so if I were moving to swing again, I'm going to turn sideways so you can see this, all right? So I have that kind of feel for me. That's how I feel swing in this particular piece. It would be possible for us to swing, though, on every beat. So let's try that. Let's swing on every beat. And yeah, so that would be another way of doing that. In fact, if we look at the way this particular piece is put together, we see that our harmonic beats actually do fall on the metric beat, right? So in our first one, it does. First line, let's look at the second line now and notice what happens here. If we were swinging the second line, let's swing it. So we would do, again, we'd have that same feeling of swing like that, but here we've got a lot more interest harmonically. And because of that, these bass notes are moving stepwise. That gives them more energy, more harmonic emphasis there. So let's move to these bass notes. Now, they're much closer together. It's like those columns in the poster where the columns are much closer together. So we have a smaller little swing on those harmonic beats. Let's try the second line. Now, if you really want fun with it, try walking it. Or you can, yeah, let's walk it. Let's do that. So if you'll stand up for a moment, anytime you're moving your whole body, you know, you want to be aware of connection again from the center of the body now to the arches of the feet. All right. So let's try our second line, feeling that support, that structure of harmonic beat. What did you notice about balances in your body whenever you were moving to the harmonic beat? Different levels there. Anyone?
I felt really connected,
Oh, good.
which at 66, I'm happy to know I can discover.
Yay. Yeah, anyone else? Did it
I
work
felt
for you
like-
all? Oh, go ahead, Mary Hannah.
I was just going to say that, you know, for the faster moving notes, I needed to be more up over my tiptoes in order to be graceful.
Yes. Yeah. We could have done this, putting your arm out and experiencing the harmonic beat here. Do you want to play the second line for us? Okay. Here, doing it that way, we also can feel bum, 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 bum. You get that sense of change of balance, but I think that it's not as obvious because this is a smaller part of the body that we're moving as when we're on our feet. And Mary Hannah said, you know, you really have to be forward on your toes to move to those eighth notes there. So you might be thinking, well, on the second line right here in measures 4 and 5, we're moving to every bass note, but then we've got other bass notes where we're not really moving to, we're saying those are not structural. The reason is that in general, when a chord is broken, as they are, so if you're looking right here in measure 1, you'll see that left hand is just breaking a chord apart. And
Marianne, I'm sorry, Marianne, I'm having a little trouble hearing right now. And I thought it was because there was some interference from another Zoom person. Could you repeat the last thing you just said?
oh, I said, you might be wondering why we're not moving to every bass note up here in measures 1 and 2, when in measures 4 and 5, we do move to every bass note. It has to do with the fact that in measures 1 and 2, we just have broken chords. And broken chords have their own energy. In fact, every pitch has its own energy. But a broken chord will not necessarily have the energy that creates structure in the piece. We could easily condense that into just a G major chord. But if we move down to measure 4, we can't condense that. Yeah, we've got 3 separate harmonies there. And so anytime we have those 3 separate harmonies, that has created enough energy that we feel like, that's more structural and that's a harmonic beat. So, so moving to all the bass notes, moving to just the ones that have more energy in them, the harmonic beats, creates different experiences. There will be a different shift of balance in that. If I move to every bass note in measures 1 and 2, bum, ba, ba, dum, bum, bum, I might just feel like, oh, I'm just moving to the energy of every 8th beat or every eighth quarter. I'm moving that way. And so they're just different layers of experience with a piece of music. I mentioned to you that melody tones also form a part of harmonic beat. The melody tones that are over every harmonic beat are called the essential melody. And those breathe in a different way that Mary Hannah is going to talk with us about. And so I would like to turn it over to her, except I do want to
Mary Ann,
say, yes.
I really can't hear you now. And I heard Phyllis really well when she came in.
Okay. I do want to say that this book, Creative Motion, has an entire article on Follow Me in it. If you want to explore more about that particular piece. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Hannah now.
Thank you, Marianne. Before we leave your segment of the presentation, are there any questions for Marianne?
How does the concept of a harmonic beat relate to harmonic rhythm?
Yeah, well, they're not the same thing, but harmonic rhythm will be reflected in a harmonic beat, because harmonic rhythm is the rate at which harmonies change within a particular piece of music. So if you're looking at up here on the first line, you'll see we're in G major and we have a slow harmonic rhythm right here, right? We're in G major all the way until you get to beat number 3, measure 3, beat 3, where we finally get a dominant chord, right? Then you move to the second line and it's a little more rapid. We have a 5/6 going to 1, going to a 7 diminished 7, 7 diminished 7 inverted. And then, but overall, this 1 is on a very weak beat. So overall, the second line has the feeling of being in 5-ish. We'll call it 5-ish, okay? So folk songs often have a very slow harmonic rhythm. And you can tell that can impact how we look at harmonic beat. However, let's look back up here at this first line again. Even though we're really on a G chord from measure 1, beat 1, all the way until we get to beat 3, even though we're there on 1, we still have structural points because rhythm when you're talking about harmonic beat, you have to put the harmonic rhythm along with metric rhythm and put those two together. And so that's how they differ. Did that answer your question, Sam?
I think so. I had another question too, is how does all of this, how does the concept of swing and everything relate to the natural accents that occur in the measure?
Yeah, swing relates a lot to the natural accents because that's actually where we feel it. We tend to feel swing on any naturally accented beat. Yeah. Now there will be there is a difference though. The younger you are, the more you tend to feel the small beats. So preschoolers will feel eighth beats. So they might feel bum 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 bum. They'll feel that because their little bodies are small, and so they feel those small ones. It really takes more maturity for someone to begin to feel those high levels of swing at quarter note, eighth, at half note, at the swing of the measure, or the whole phrase, whole piece.
Thank you,
Any other
Marianne.
questions?
I just have a quick question, and it's probably can wait until the end, but you know, this is things like concepts like this and doing any kind of kinesthetic stuff with kids and even teenagers is pretty easy. And, you know, I'm 4 years into my adult choir and I love them a lot, but getting them to this point, you know, I have alums in the choir who just go with me because they've been doing it. But how do you, and again, this could be addressed at the end, getting adults engaged in this and getting them past the, I feel silly.
I'll pick up on that, Marianne.
Okay.
So, well, as you know, it partly depends on the length of time you've been working with a group and how much confidence and trust they have in you. But also, I find that starting with seated activities, as we're going to do in my little segment, can be a good bridge and connect into real life activities. So, I'm going to come back to our melodic respiration at the end of my presentation and pick up with harmonic beats and how it's a little bit like dandling a baby on your knees. And many older people have had that opportunity to do so. So let me share my screen. And when I say many people have had this opportunity, you know, I'm making an assumption that we could at least have seen somebody have a baby on their lap and be bouncing them on their lap. So I'm going to ask you to sit, but sit forward a little bit so that your feet are on the floor and that you can bounce your knees up and down by way of moving your ankles. And then imagine that you have hold of a baby on your lap, and we're just going to find the spring of all the steady beats for starters. And I'm going to ask if Bob would do that. And you imagine you have a baby on your lap as we bounce to the steady beat. All right, take it away, Bob. And so we could not have bounced that baby without that rebound that Phyllis talked about in spring. There's a down up, and then the baby enjoys that bounce because there's the rebound that happens as a result. When we're talking about harmonic beats, you see that I've also created harmonic beats with this symbol of an X like we do. And the harmonic beats in this piece are not as predictable. So the first and the second lines, they are identical. So it's a 2 beats, half note spring and swing. The third line though, we have a harmonic change. from a 2 to a 5/7 to a 1, G minor, C7, 5. And so there's a bounce, 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 then another bounce, bounce, bounce. Third line, the same. Fourth line, look how active it is. A little bit unusual for a folk song. And so we have a harmonic change every beat. Bum, 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 bum. So while looking at this on the screen, let's go back to that baby bouncing activity. And this time the baby gets a little bit different bounce. So we're going to follow the X's and bounce on each X. Take it away, Bob. So that was just our first effort. We're going to do it one more time. And this time I'm going to invite you to make a choice. Either you keep the baby on your lap or you just internalize it and feel that spring inside, a felt sense, so that you could imagine that your, let's say the top of your head is where the ball is bouncing, or you could imagine that at your solar plexus, where your breathing center is where there is a spring or that bounce. And Bob, I would love for you to take it about bum, 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 a little bit more march like this time. All right, you may continue the actual outer movements or inner movements. Cool. Would this time you connect with that figure eight that we were allowing to happen before? And when I say allowing to happen, it's different than drawing a figure eight. So right now, just pretend that you have a marker on the end of your finger and you're drawing a figure eight. Okay. Now, instead of that, at the beginning of that figure eight motion, there's a drop in and a release of the weight of your arm. You drop it and then it swings back around so that there's this natural sense of weight transfer. This time, let's explore making a figure eight to connect each X. And the X symbol, actually, we take that from the middle of the figure eight. So wherever that X is where we have the next crossing in the middle of our figure eight. All right, one more time, please, Bob. All right, would anybody like to respond to what that experience was like?
It's making me, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
All
It's
right, Michael first and then Sam.
yeah, it's making me really look at the structure so much differently, and in a much more connected way. Yeah.
Thank you. Sam?
To me, it actually feels a little bit frantic. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong. Maybe that's why.
Well, if it feels frantic, then we're going to ask Bob to go back to his original tempo and do it one more time. Because as this is a new experience, if you're making a large shape and then suddenly you're adjusting for a smaller swing, that may feel frantic. Okay. How about one more time? And Bob will take your original tempo this time. Thank you, Bob. Hopefully that was a little more graceful experience. And as the X's get closer together, then those note value timing that Marianne introduced us to, we need to be a little farther forward, over our toes, over our hips, more in the fingertip area, and a smaller gesture. Just because of time, I'm going to move on. Next, we're going to just have a brief introduction to phrase form. And if you were looking at your clock, we aim to end by 4:15. So phrase form, we think of phrases, well, sure, we see them marked in the music with that shape, that little arch shape, but we're going to experience it off the page for a minute. The yawn is the ideal model. And here you see in the baby phase today, I have a beautiful picture of a baby yawning. And when babies yawn, it's at any time, right? There's no sense of politeness. It's just like, oh yeah, I need a yawn, right? We often stifle our yawn because it's seemingly rude. We don't want to show our tonsils to everybody. However, you know when you're going to need to stifle, right? Because when you sense that yawn is coming, you know if it's just a little, like you can cover it like this, or if it's like, oh my gosh, I got to hold that in. So the yawn has one complete action embedded in it that then unfolds in time. So in the beginning, there is what we call the impulse, or the beginning of the phrase / yawn. And that often is like a little sensation in your throat, a little tickle in your throat, a little sensation of an ah. And so if you would just close your mouth for a second and inhale through your nose and think ah. There's a lift in your soft palate. In that spring of the lift of the soft palate is something we try to teach for choral tone, choral directors, but also that beginning of a powerful send-off for the yawn. So after that yawn begins, there's a little ah breath in the back, a little tickle. It's like the mouth has to open. And then if you really get into it, your arms get involved. So there's this what we call governing idea at the beginning of the yawn, the body knows how long it needs. It unfolds in time. That unfolding in time is the flight of energy. So because it's not super attractive to look at, I'm going to ask you, if you're not comfortable with having your video on screen, you can stop your video. And would you just allow yourself to experience a full-bodied yawn? I know you're seated, you could stay seated, you could stand if you want. So we're going to take about 30 seconds for yawn exploration. All right, so let that yawn to come to its conclusion. And hopefully you all were able to experience at least one of those, one good yawn. And the more you do it, the more you're going to want to do it. So you do not need to worry about stifling yawns, because once you get started, they keep coming. So in that unfolding, there is a point where you cannot take in any more air. You're full. And there's like a moment where it changes direction to exhale. And in that exhaling, that turn over there, we call that the once further. It's like a little rocket booster, ignites to let the energy continue with the yawn. Oops. All right, so for this one, you may stand or sit. We're going to connect not to the yawn now, but just to your inhalation and exhalation. I'm going to ask you to take your hands and overlap them at your solar plexus. So you're just above the belly and below the sternum, the hard place. And first of all, just allow your shoulders to relax, settle into your feet or your hips, and allow all the breath to leave. Now, if we're doing this beautifully, your hands will not be moving now, only your belly. When you cannot take it anymore, relax your belly and the air will flood in. There will come a time where you need to exhale. There's that once further and you exhale. You're not going to imagine that you're going to be filling up not just your inside body, but an extension of that, almost as if there's a giant balloon that encompasses the space before you. And at the beginning of that breath, there is a very, very, very subtle spring of the diaphragm, which is moving down. At that moment, you're harnessing the beginning or the impulse of your breath in. Your hands will extend forward, encompassing that fullness. And then there's that once further. And as you exhale, your hands will come back in. All right, let's take a moment. I'm not going to lead you through that because everybody's breath comes in at a different time, but I will keep doing it on screen in case you want to see that. And from there, we are going to experiment with timing that breathing to a set, steady beat, okay, to experience the beginning of phrase. So now our phrase gesture, instead of just being forward and back, I'm going to ask you to be a little more demonstrative, and on the inhalation, go what we would say wide with your hands. There's a turnover, they come back together, and then there is the tall gesture on the exhalation. So we're going to start with tall because we need to get the air out. So we breathe out. There's a point where it cannot go out anymore. It swings to the middle and it goes wide to inhale. You cannot inhale anymore and it swings tall to exhale. Again, it reaches a point where it needs to swing in again for breathing in and breathing out. Now, in your mind and your body, think about going out as feeling wide, turning over to tall. And it's not just your arms, but your whole self seems to expand wide, and your whole self seems to go tall up to the ceiling and through the floor. Thinking wide, going to tall, going to wide. Now, let's create some phrases that align with that are going to climax on certain beats. Those are in red on my screen. So a phrase to 3 would be like this. I'm exhaling. I inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Join me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's almost like you're moving through water. And there's a turnover between 2 and 3. 1, 2, and 3, 4. We feel that sort of lift of the once further. Now let's go twice as far. We need a bigger impulse now because we're going to go all the way to the number 5. All right, so let's exhale. Here we go. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In. 2 out. Wide. 2, 3. Going to tall. 2, 3, 4. All right. Would you agree that those feel very different? A phrase to 3 versus a phrase to 5. I'm guessing that means agreement since people didn't say anything. I'm going to keep going unless people would like me to stop and answer a question. All right, so right now we are aligning with our breathing. That will be a little trickier since Rob's not in the same room as us. So maybe on that first phrase, you just hear it and then we come in. So where the little X's That's where it's going to be a breathe in, going wide to tall, going wide to tall. Let's just notice how every phrase is the same. We've got the same short one measure phrase mark going until the ending when it is that longer phrase. And these are counted by the number of metric beats. So this one is a phrase to 3. 1, 2, 3. This one isn't a phrase to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Bob, would you play again and let us explore our phrase gesture to the little nut tree? Let's do it one more time. Prepare, big impulse. Now, as singers, we also want to take into account the text of what's being said. And if we have a choice, because maybe we have a longer phrase, we might choose a different word to emphasize. So in the first example, I have chosen to climax on the word sake. And I am, in my creative motion methodology, saying, yes, there's a harmonic beat. I need to choose a harmonic beat in order to have an impulse or a climax. Generally, they're going to be on a strong beat, and it's on a beat 3. So this one, all for the sake of my little nut tree, in my baritone voice, feels very, very different than it did before. In the last example, I could say, I want to go to the very, very last note, and that could also be acceptable. All for the sake of my little nut tree. So those are just 2 different ways that you might feel that. And I said 4:15, so we may not have time for everything, but I'm going to go to just one other quick demonstration and explanation. So we have been working with the physical breath to help us as a model for what we call the energy breath. As singers and wind players, we cannot make a sound while we are inhaling. So we cannot begin a phrase on an inhale, right? So we then rely on that felt sense of what it felt like when we went wide as we begin a phrase. Do, 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 even though it's all on a physical exhalation as I'm making a sound. Do we have any questions about what I've presented? Okay, can I just see, I'll come back to this in a minute. Show of hands. How many people were able to make a connection from the yawn idea to the idea of the energy of a phrase? Okay, great. How many people were able to then time their inhalation exhalations to the beats of the music? You were able to make that switch. Sometimes takes a little more practice, especially over Zoom. It's a little different. Then the next step in the process is for you to become so comfortable with that process that you can remember that spring in the hands, remember the spring in the breath, and go beginning, climax. Phrase starts, turns over. Marianne mentioned that there's something called melodic respiration. We won't experience it, but I will share with you, and I will share this and other PDFs that we've had. Whoops, wrong one. In the chat today, I will share them by email afterwards. So the essential melody. Why am I continuing to have follow me? I am so sorry. I'm gonna try one more time. The essential melody tones are at the top of those columns of energy, and they themselves carry a sense of wide and tall that can add nuance to our experience. And I have found in singing and in playing my French horn that experiencing wide and tall helps my intonation and then the intonation of my groups. So if the melody tone over the harmonic beat, we start on a phrase wide, then the next one is tall, is a higher note, so it goes wide, a little more wide, it turns over to go tall. And that sensation of wide, tall is the same thing we experienced with phrase. It's just that here it's in a different context. And we do that a lot in creative motion. We have building blocks that have the spring in rhythm and notes and in chords and with phrases, and there are other things we did not demonstrate today, and it makes this like beautiful quilt. And with experience, you can be in touch with more than one thing at a time, maybe all of these things. If you're Bob and Marilyn, you've done it for your entire life. But it's also very valid to say, I really want to explore harmonic beats. I want to just find the swing in this piece. And usually entering on one of those levels will give you an awareness of the bigger picture. We're going to come back to Bob playing in a minute after our Q&A. But if you'd like to know more, if you have my personal email, you can feel free to email me there. Our organization is info@creativemotion.org. We send clinicians out to do in-person workshops for different events. We also, some of our teachers do private or group lessons. And for this year, 2023, we are offering space available, one free lesson to people who would be interested in that. And so if you would like to have a follow-up to this, you can contact info@creativemotion.org. Are there any questions, comments that you'd like to share here as we close out?
So the concept of wide and tall as it relates to breathing is wide is inhalation and tall is exhalation, is that?
That's correct, Sam.
And that relates to singing as in with a phrase, you can make certain notes almost carry that wide feeling, and then certain notes will carry the
Yes.
tall feeling. That aligns with the strong and weak beats, correct?
Sometimes it does, yes. Well, I would say yes. And what we looked at today for melodic respiration, as a singer, I sometimes feel it on every single note, depending on the passage that I need to work on. So in melodic respiration, yes, it's over the harmonic beats.
Okay, thank you.
How many people discovered something new today that you might want to explore more? Great. I hope that you will be in touch, and that I do have in the back of my mind, I don't have a date, but I do have in the back of my mind to do something at the Nova Alexandria campus in person sometime this spring. And so I would love to have you come and be in person. I'm wondering if
Michael's
Michael's hand up.
No, it just, for some reason, it just keeps going up and I'm not doing anything.
okay.
But
I just
thank
didn't
you.
wanna- I didn't want to silence you.
I have magical powers apparently. So
I did put the link to the Google Slides from my segment in the chat. Anyone
Thank
who
you.
wants to do that. And I don't have Emma Lynn's email address, Mary Hannah. So if you would pass that on to her.
I do. I will pass that on.
Thank you.
And I can combine everybody's into one and send it out. Okay, so I'm just going to invite you to listen one more time to Bob's incredibly sensitive and artistic playing as we close out with hearing the complete piece. Maybe as you listen, you will want to focus on Bob's sense of spring or swing or phrasing. as he's playing. Take it away, Bob. That was absolutely beautiful, Bob. Well, thanks so much to everyone who came in to the session today. We appreciate your interest, and we're happy that you could be with us today. And thanks to our all of our presenters today, Marianne and Phyllis, and to everybody who tuned in. Phyllis, do you have any closing remarks?
Nope, I just put our email address to info@creativemotion.org in the chat. So glad that you could be with us today. I'll hang on if anybody wants to chat for a little bit. Otherwise,
I'm happy to do so as well.
I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you for coming, and come back again soon.